I'm Andrew Coates, the host of the Live Free and Die Hard podcast, and welcome to episode number 317 Lifetime. I've got Luka Hocevar back. You're creeping up there on getting up there with the most appearances ever. Brian Cron, I think, still holds the record for most appearances, but
Damn
you're
it.
definitely climbing that rank. And there's a reason why. I always love having you back. This one is going to be kind of a special episode. We're just going full dive into what attending continuing education, fitness conferences, events, what that's done for your career. We'll talk about mine, but and the whole point of this is you and I each have our own event. So your event is the Vigor Ground Fitness and Business Summit. That is October 10th through 12th. And I'm going to be speaking along with an amazing lineup. We'll talk about that. And then I have the Evolve Strike Business and Coaching Conference in Edmonton, September 13th to 14th, where you're back speaking again. So we're each going to be at each other's events. And this is probably a good time to get everybody listening and be like, guys, boots on the ground. This stuff has changed my career. It's done a lot for you. So to you, like, would you be where you are right now without going to these kind of events over the years, the masterminds, conferences, and the people you met?
I mean, the quick answer is no, but I think the overarching principle, right? I always like talking in principles first and then getting tactical with different stuff. But I was fortunate to make a decision early on in my career to man, I was still living in Slovenia and playing basketball, starting to train people. And I told my brother, I remember I was helping him out with his translation company, and I was like, I think I shared my story, but my last year of pro career, I was getting paid for about 6 to 7 months. A lot of the players were looking to sue the team. So I'm like playing pro ball, doing two-a-days, coaching people in between, and basically helping my brother run his translation company because he'd be out of the country quite a bit. So I'm like working a lot and say, hey, look, man, and like, how about like you don't pay me, for what he was supposed to pay me. And then I went into this called the Trainers Inner Circle, TIC, back in the day. I mean, this is like 18 years ago. Like Pat Rigsby ran that, maybe even more than that. But the point is like, thankfully, I was like, and I don't know what made me kind of do that. I think I was reading a lot of books, and a lot of the books that were saying like, hey, man, if you're not surrounded by people that you want to, you want to achieve the things that they're achieving, if you don't have coaches and mentors. So that kind of like brainwashed me in a positive way. I joined TIC, and that was my first kind of exposure to, you know, investing in myself, being, even though that was online and virtual at that point in time, I had that exposure. And also part of it, and like, this is important, I think, I grew up, obviously, like, basketball was a big part of my life. And when I was about 16, 17, my coach got me, I was like, man, I want to dunk. And my basketball coach knew this guy, Srđan Đorđević, who was like the top track and field coach. I mean, this dude trained Brigitte Bukowicz, Marilyn Adi, like Olympic medalists and gold medalists, right? Like, and so I went, and I showed up in the mornings and I trained with him, and I got significantly faster. I was able to dunk it because it's like, hey, you know what? I'm around the fastest people on the planet with one of the best coaches in Eastern Europe. And it's like, the trajectory of my results was like, whew, it's like took off. Now, the reason I say that is because that was the like aha moment, right? And then I'm reading these books and it's like, hey, you want to be successful? Like, you gotta invest in yourself. And I kind of brainwashed myself enough to go into TIC. And that was the beginning of it, because then it was perform better and so on and so forth. And like, I mean, there's no way that, one, I'd be here, or two, that I could learn and apply as fast as I did. And I actually think it's becoming, unfortunately, less and less of a dominant learning thing. And I think it's a huge mistake, because I love online stuff. I love that people can tune into this podcast. I can share YouTube videos, they're long form on education, create social media posts, all of that. Like, it's not like I'm against that, far from it. But there's just the depth of, number one, the depth of learning from being around somebody is a different ball game. And then the connections, man, like, that's, you said it, the connection part is, you build relationships, like, legitimately. So here's the crazy part about it, right? Everybody that's speaking at my summit is, almost everybody is a close friend, right? Vast majority of people are close friends that I have built relationships with over the last 20 years. Guess where I built these relationships? at events. That's like every single one of them started. Every person that's speaking there, I can literally tell you a story about, how we met. Actually, I'll just tell you the Martin Rooney one because it's a cool one. I was at Ryan Lee boot camp, which, by the way, anybody that knows what Ryan Lee's boot camp is an OG in the game, has been around a long time. But Ryan Lee was like the first fitness online marketing person that helped a lot of people be successful. And he ran this boot camp in Connecticut. So I flew out for that. By the way, this is a point in time where I'm, my first years in America as a trainer. I'm, working crazy 18, 20-hour days. But, I was like, hey, I got to get around these people. And I drove to, back there because Connecticut wasn't that far from Jersey. So I drove to the Francos, Zach Evanesh's. I remember I was missing Zach. And then I went to Parisi where Martin was at, and I was like learning all the Martin stuff on speed training at that point in time. And I just walked in, with my little business card, and I was like, hey, I'm Luka, I'm from Slovenia. And like, I live in America now, and I'm a trainer, and I've been following Martin. Like, can I get to see him? I gave him my business card. And the lady was like, yeah, Martin's here. He doesn't really have a lot of time. Let me check. Martin came down, said he had 20 minutes, we ended up talking shop for like 6-7 hours straight, just about, because I was a geek, so we just hit it off. And, next Perform Better Summit, man, we hung out, and kind of like the rest is history. But I created and ran a TFW business division for 5 or 6 years. Martin and his family are still like, some of my closest friends. I love them to death. And my point being is that never happens. Do I not like venture out, go to Ryan Lee's boot camp, go to to Parisi at that point in time? And I was doing that like all the time. And it really skyrocketed me because I was around the best of the best in the different sections and sectors of, strength and conditioning and sports performance and fitness, and again, I can tell a story about Alan Cosgrove and Eric Cressy. It's literally have 50, 60 stories like that. But every single one of them, like I flew out to Cressy Performance and stayed there for 9-10 days, with Eric training every day, sometimes twice, being around the facility all day long with him and Tony Genlicor. Like it always had to do with going to an event, with going to the thing and connecting with the people and learning. And so, that hasn't changed like that. I think that almost because it's even more valuable today because less people do it. You know what I mean? It's like that quote of like, what's difficult is scarce and what's scarce is valuable. I think that, it is more difficult to get a flight, book a hotel, so you're investing more money. But because it's scarce, it's more valuable.
I noticed this with writing, and there's almost an analogy because I think you're right. I think people feel productive and like they're learning through social media. And I actually am bullish. We both are bullish on social media. We think it's a valuable tool. But I think where the coach makes a mistake is if social media becomes your primary way of learning the various aspects of your career, you're missing out on depth. So in the writing side, what I've noticed is because the old school, your T Nations, your Muscle Fitness, your Men's Health, etc., or the old affiliate network, those were gatekeepers. They effectively functioned as gatekeepers, and you had to get in with those people in order to be platformed and become an authority in the industry. Now you can become an authority by being really clever with video-based social media, which I think is great. It also allows a lot of people who aren't qualified to do it, but I don't spend my time complaining about that. But now, what I think actually you can go back to and gives you even more credibility because fewer people are doing it is the public speaking side of stuff. But the writing, if you go in and you write for these big publications, like you've been featured on so many of these things, it gives a special kind of authority now. Almost, it's not necessarily more than the way it did before, but I think it stands out just as much, if not more now.
Yeah, no, look, you're absolutely right about this. We've talked about this before, the content side of things, right? Like, and I'm bullish on it 100%. Like I think it's important for people to understand is like it can be this and that. Harv Tieker, the millionaire mind. I'm not a this or that guy. I'm a this and that guy, and I believe that wholeheartedly. I think that there's certain, but here's the deal, right? Like, what if we had to move this a little bit because I just had an in staff for 2 Anytime Fitnesses here at Vigor, and we were talking about like one of my topics was like having a pro coaching session, because for anybody that's listening, if you are a coach, a trainer, right, like you're training people in person, which I think honestly right now I'm very bullish on that. What I mean by that is that it's actually the fastest way to do really well. Number one, to become a better coach, and two, to make more money. Faster than online. And people might disagree with me on this, but it's okay. But my point, the reason why I say this is because, look, there's an aspect of becoming a phenomenal coach, right? And coaching people, which I think transfers to online as well. And for that, you need reps. You need reps in person. You need to be coaching people. Do you know how much more, like how much more you can improve? For example, going to my spot at Cressy's or Boyle's, or I could give you a ton of examples, or Orlando's, or and you're there for 3-4 days immersed, watching these folks that have been doing it for an exceptionally long period of time at elite levels, just watching and learning and asking, and like a weekend, 3-4 days like that might be like, a year of your own trying to figure out and making mistakes. And sometimes you don't even know what mistakes you're making. Your feedback loop is not even there, right? Like you're doing your thing, and then a year later, you're like, oh shit, like I've been doing that wrong or bad, and I've been repeating it like 1,000 times. Now I have to like unlearn this. And so that's where, again, you can't learn that. That's very difficult to do at that level or that depth on social media. Honestly, you just can't, period. And for anybody that's ever been around that will instantly know and understand what I'm talking about. Like where you come back and it's like your mind is melted from, how much you've learned and the awareness that you gained of what you're not doing well. Because contrast, right? Like for example, I'll use basketball again. You play on, in your local community center, and you're crushing everybody, right? And you're like, I'm the shit, man. My pull up three is great. At this, my step back, blah, blah, right? And then you go, your friend's like, hey, let's go to this other spot. Like we got a run going, and you got a bunch of D1 guys that show up, right? And all of a sudden, that move that worked in your local community center didn't work. That guy that you blew by, you don't blow by anymore. And you're like, oh shit, contrast. You just recognized that you were good, like you're a big fish in a very, very, very small pond, and now you went to a different pond, and it's like, man, I need to step my game up. Well, guess what? Now you can do that because you're learning from those people.
And the pond now comes to you. You may be local and you may be doing well word of mouth local, which still is powerful, but you can, the entire pond via the internet is now accessible to everybody, right where you are. And so you're no longer competing against the local anymore. You're competing against everybody. So you better step up your game so that way you can stand toe to toe with the best of the best that are reaching all of your, people who are in your immediate geographic radius too.
And oh, man, I wanted to bring this up in today's conversation. It's like, so Dean Jackson, right? Phenomenal marketer. He's the guy that you probably know for super signature and the email. But Dean's, a genius in marketing. He has this phrase and it says like, become 3 Mile famous. And that is, one of the things at the summit that like the presenters, including myself, are going to kind of cover, because I think there's these two buckets, right? I think that for most people to have a brick and mortar business that are in-person trainers that run, group trainings, boot camps, so on, if you become 3 Mile famous, you'll do exceptionally well financially and career-wise, and you wouldn't actually need to do anything else. Now, with that said, I believe in the other bucket, which is building your brand, beyond the 3 miles. Now, I think that one can be done faster than the other. I think the brand building one is the long game. So, what I try to essentially instill in coaches now, and I do a lot of, I just did a in staff for Lifetime Fitness in Bellevue. I just did another one here for Anytime. Like I do, I do a lot of this for bigger name companies as well and whatnot. And I say, look, like educate people, but make that the long game. Like don't try to get on IG and like, blow up in a month, right? Like, and then get stressed out because you're not, right? But hey, but create a plan and create a strategy for doing that, and then create really good stuff. That doesn't mean it has to be like highly edited and you got to have all these people and a cameraman. Like, no, does your content educate people and help them with useful things that will solve a problem? It could be a mini problem, it could be a medium problem, it could be a big problem, and you just keep doing that. And all you're doing is sharing the stuff you're already helping your clients with. And then what platform you choose, that's up to you. I mean, I think we both have would probably lean and tilt towards certain things, like again, like the Facebooks and the Instagrams and Whether, I think we all believe in email, we should, but but with that said, that's all you're doing, right? And you're blocking time out, and you're not stressing out about like not getting 20 clients in person, from your IG account in the first 2 months. But over time, when you do that stuff, you do build a brand, and it opens up doors, and it gets you speaking engagements. But now you can launch an online product that makes you money, and online coaching, and so on and so forth. So that's, in a really kind of, obviously nutshell, we could probably talk about for a fucking week straight. Is those two things. And like, I try to merge them and teach people how to do that, because I do that. You know what I mean?
So talking about the social media growth, and you and I have both crushed on social media. We can always look for examples of people who are like destroying us, but that's notwithstanding. There are three really important levers I found with social media. Yes, the content has to be amazing. It always fundamentally has to be there. But in terms of growth, you mentioned brand, and being able to brand around things like the publication I've written for has been key. But here's another one that don't often gets missed. One of the most powerful levers in terms of how my social media grew was the relationship that I had with some pretty awesome friends and industry leaders who I'd met in my travels. I've gone to a whole bunch of Renaissance periodization stuff. I've often shared how Mike Israetel was sharing a lot of my stuff on his wall, tagging me in 2020 when my stuff started growing. And that drove thousands of followers my way. I've had people like Jordan Syatt and Jonathan Goodman, amongst many others, pushing my social media for a very long time. And when you have people who've accumulated incredible brand and trust that you have invested relationships in, because I've been listening to, reading their stuff for a much, much longer period of time. I've been digging into Adam Bornstein stuff for well over a decade. And then, like, within the last couple of years, you connected us. And then, Adam wanted me to help promote his book. And then next, he's got you and me both in Arnold Schwarzenegger's email newsletter. Holy shit. But that all started with just sharing, supporting other people's stuff, but then going to events that you deepen these relationships with these people.
What 100%, like, for example, and look, by the way, I always think intent matters. This is important. I think, you've talked about this before. Intent matters, meaning I've seen a lot of people that like come to build, it's like you're trying to build a relationship, but instantly I can tell that what you're trying to do is, get recognition or juice yourself up and do that. And, whereas like the relationship part is always like, as corny as it may sound, right? Bring value, be yourself, be authentic. Because that's what's going to help you build that. And it's a long game, but like I go back and, some of my closest friends now too, that we created a ton of like collaboration content, which whether it's, Kelsey Heenan, where we've done social, YouTube, all types of stuff, right? Sean Stevenson, who, again, I built that friendship with Sean a long time ago, a decade. And as he grew, he invited me to the Model Health Show, which is one of the top, health podcasts in the world. Was on there twice. That helped a lot. And I can go on and on and on. But all of those is like, build a relationship, deliver value. People recognize you for being great at what you do. Again, I'm going to always go back to that, by the way. Be phenomenal at what you do, right? And the way that people know that is that you got to share stuff, right? Because the thing is, the 3 Mile Famous part, by the way, look, I'm all about that. That was the first part of my career, right? And it's still important, by the way, right? Because it's like, if you want to keep building that local brick and mortar business, that's more important. Those people in the 3 miles need to know that you're the guy that can help them out, or the girl that can help them out. But, again, to go beyond that, you have to share with the world your knowledge, right? And help people out. And guess what? Then those relationships that you have, those people will want to put you on, because they're like, man, like, I think this guy's great at what they do. But, and I'm going to bring them on and deliver value to my audience. And, the amount of events that I've done, again, I mentioned the Martin Rooney story, where bringing value to TFW, running the business division, whether it was the Super Coach event that we did together with Kels, me and Don, and on and on and on it goes. Like, I mean, I can name so many different things that were collaborations, or still collaborations, where two people come together and like share value with the audience. I mean, that's what podcasts are, right? Like, hey, you got a relationship. Hey, would love to have you on my show. And sometimes people that are difficult to get on the show, come on a show because you have a relationship with them. And that opens up a whole bunch of listeners and audience, and possibly opportunities down the line. And so it's all interconnected. And I think a lot of this is kind of like the foundation one of quality communication and relationship building, that everyone should really learn. But the reality is like not enough people do it. Really don't, you know, and
All right, you finish it. I had a thought.
no, I think it's important for people to recognize, you know, what characteristics and skill sets help develop a great career, right? And sometimes we'll veer off, and a person can be like, oh, like I don't know if this is important. No, 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 no. This is extremely important, and that's why I like to share examples. I know that you share examples of how these things happen and what's a better way to do it. I mean, I don't, you know, it's just like if somebody said, hey, we just figured out the best way to, you know, to drop body fat off a client in a healthy way. Wouldn't you want to do it? Know it? Of course you would, right? Hey, here's the best way that we found, or three best ways that we found to build your local brick and mortar business. You do it. Here's the best way or the best ways to build relationships with people and connect and be able to collaborate, you know, short and long term. You'd want to know it. Yep. So, I mean, that's what we share and give tactical examples of it, as well as the overarching principle, because I do think it's important, right? Like, I hate being just like the bullet point guy because I think everything needs context. And like, hey, here's the principle, here's a strategy, here's a specific tactic, here's an example of how this, you know, pans out in the real world, or how I did it. I think that's an important way to approach this.
So the thing I was going to throw in there, when people come to these kind of events, because you talked about, meeting and developing relationships with Martin Rooney, Eric Cressy, you're tight with John Berardi, all these big names in the industry, the icons. The person listening, it's really important that you do show up like a person and you treat the people who are, quote, on the stage, industry leaders, like the real people. That matters. But far more important and far more valuable, it's not worrying about trying to curry the favor and the attention of the speaker tier. It's actually going in and the person sitting next to you, get to know that person, because all too often that person is going to be quiet. They may be the person who is there. They want to meet people. They may not be as outgoing as you are. A, you can connect those people, but two, these are people on the same road that you're on. Ask anybody who met me in 2017, 2018 at one of these events, and we've stayed close. They've seen the kind of stuff I've been able to do for them. And conversely, the first event I ever went to, 2017 Fitness Summit, Kansas City. I probably came away with 100 new Facebook friends. I'm still tight with and connect with a lot of those people this day. Two of those people turned out they both hosted fitness events. And I showed up and I supported their stuff. My buddy Tim Art out of Spokane and my buddy Jeff Aker, who is the provincial director of the NSCA here in Alberta. And then by just showing up, supporting their stuff. And then as my own stuff grew, each of them turned around and invited me to come and speak at their stuff. Now, that was never my goal or my agenda. But if you treat these people like they're just as important and you develop those relationships, I promise you those people over the years, people like them have been doing the most amazing shit. I think you would have met my buddy Phil Dominguez at my event last year here in Edmonton. He came up, he's he's in LA. So I was just actually with him and my buddy Chris Hitchko at Show Up Fitness. So Chris had me come down. I was down for a podcast. I did a half-day seminar at Chris's place. But that was in a big way because of Phil. Now, Phil is the sort of guy who'll go to these events. You guys ever meet him? He's gregarious, he's outgoing, he meets everybody. And just by getting to know all those people, all of a sudden he's gotten tons of podcast interviews that he's been brought on to. And Phil is just a giving dude. He's not there to like try to worry about getting into the speaker tier, but people respect the fact that this guy hustles, but he also treats people like everybody great. And that's the sort of guy you want to know. And you never know. It's not about being transactional and figuring out, all right, I'm making a whole bunch of bets on junk bonds here where maybe some of the shit will pay off down the road. No, it's nothing like that. But a lot of amazing shit will come out of, you know, I like to say this, you're not going to get Cressy's attention in any meaningful way anymore. Dude is busy running the Yankees. He's got fucking twins. He's raised a family. He's got 2 locations of Cressy Sports Performance, right? Nothing's coming out of that. But the person who's just like you on the same road as you guys are going to grow together. And that's the best part of this stuff. And I still remember the first few people that I met at some of these events that I traveled to.
So what you're saying and what I like, dude, I think I saw this yesterday and it stuck with me. And I was like, man, this is a great quote and a great thing to remember. It's like, is it more important to be blessed or to be a blessing? And I'm like, man, I like think about that. I want to repeat it, right? Is it more important to be blessed or to be a blessing? And I think that it's more important to be a blessing. And that's kind of like the go-giver kind of mindset, right? It really is. And I promise you, I mean, look, sometimes it's like I'll say stuff and it just sounds like a corny in the ether. I read this book, so you should do it type of thing. But, look, I'm speaking off of, close to 20 years experience in this field. And I can confirm 100% to, like, for myself and a lot of the people that have been in the game a long time and are successful will tell you the same thing, right? That those investments essentially, being a blessing to people on a micro and a macro level, and when I say micro, I just mean like one to one, right? You sit down with somebody and you spend time with them and you give them value and you're a blessing to them, versus macro to me is just like, hey, I don't know, like you record a 2.5 hour podcast on program design and you give your damn best stuff on there and you give it to the world. And it's like, people are like, holy shit, like this is insanely valuable, right? Either or, like that's going to pay back like tenfold, 100-fold, 1,000-fold at some point in time.
This is core to my philosophy, and this will be in my presentation at both of our events as part of something bigger on social media. And I like the framework: build a bank of grace with everybody, individually and broadly. And it's a mindset. It's jab, 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 right hook without a lot of hooks. It's give without expectation in return, and it's not withdrawing from that grace, bank of grace, every time you earn some, and living in that state of overdraft. Because we all know people who do that. They're always immediately withdrawing. They're always cashing in. They're always selling, pushing. There's nothing wrong with selling appropriately, but even selling. So let's talk about this, our events. We might think, or someone might think, that we're here asking, like, this episode in a way is a pitch. We want people to pick one, the other, or maybe if you're a rock star, both of our events and come and hang out
Yeah,
with us.
not either or, and
It's and, right? We want that. But I promise you, anybody who comes to both of these events or one of these events, it's not going to be a withdrawal from our bank of grace with you. It's going to actually be a massive deposit because it's going to change your life. And I can speak from experience. I came to Vigor Summit in 2017. I brought a couple of people that I knew because I saw this ad for it. I'm like, hey, this looks really cool. There's a whole bunch of great people in this. I came, I met a ton of people. And while I met you, we interacted a little bit. I wasn't actually, if you remember this, I wasn't there trying to be like, oh, Luka, I want to be your friend, right? That actually came after time. I had you on the podcast a few times. We weren't like tight right off the hop on that one. And then I came back. We're lots of stuff together over the years. And then I came back in 2021, completely different place in my career, completely different person, dropped in, really made other people's experience amazing, invested in the other people. I got to know a lot of the speakers well, like Don Saladino, who's become a very good friend of mine, Kelson Dennis. I was just having dinner with him in Santa Monica a week ago. But it was still give, it's still build. And because of all the depth of this relationship, plus all the shit I've worked on, guess what? I go from 2017, nobody knows me, unknown in the industry, to 2024, I'm literally in that lineup. And you got people sniffing at getting in that lineup hardcore because I know how the shit is. Because it's the DM like, hey, man, you need a speaker? It's like, come attend. Okay. Come build relationships. Okay. So I can attest to the power of this stuff.
And listen, I got some before, because again, I always want every single thing that's done. And again, we're having this conversation because we want to we want to shine a light on our events and again, how valuable they are and so on and so forth. But within that, I always like to extract lessons that people can take. And one of the things that, I think that is a big mistake for folks is to not start, because you mentioned that, like, people are reaching out to be speakers and stuff, and that happens a lot. Hey, cool. But my thing there is like, a lot of folks will go like, man, I really want to speak at this big event. And I remember when I was starting off, or should I say, I would forget about starting off. I was probably about 7 years into my career, right? And I wasn't speaking at big events, and I felt like I had a lot to share. But what I was doing, you know, I was doing a lot of small, like I was doing speaking at my gym. I was doing a ton of lunch and learns. I was doing smaller events, and then eventually we put on, which was the first Vigor Summit. It was called Changing the Game back then, this is the 10-year anniversary, right? So this event this year is a 10-year anniversary of Changing the Game. So I've been doing events for 10 years. This is my 7th really big event. We've done hundreds of smaller ones between certs, seminars, all that stuff at Vigor. But my point being is, don't wait for somebody to give you permission to be valuable. Let me repeat that. Do not wait for somebody to give you permission to be valuable, which means guess what? Like, hey, I got first week of August, I got another nutrition seminar at Vigor because people were like, oh, dude, the last one you did was awesome. When's the next one? You know what? I'll do another one. I already got a name for it. I'm going to bring the guy that does my live streaming, and we're going to live stream it on Facebook and YouTube for free. Just watch the shit. You know what I mean? Like, be a blessing. Okay. But I did a lot of that before I stepped on the first big stage, which I built myself, lost a ton of money doing it. But my point is, do that now. Like, don't wait for anybody to give you permission. So by the time that you have the opportunity, you'll be very good or great. Right. And like, there's a huge lesson there because if you're essentially what a lot of people are doing is waiting for the home run. And I'm like, you need to be hitting singles every single damn day. And that is you creating content through video, you doing something in person in your community and becoming 3 Mile famous, right? Like that is right there. So instead of waiting, like, oh man, I wish that person would give me opportunity. I wish this opportunity would open up. In that meantime, you could be creating opportunities by being a blessing, by being a go-giver, by delivering value online and offline, and watch how amazing shit happens.
Look at a guy like a Ram Gregorian. Is the third year now coming up that he'll be doing his Real Coaches Summit. You're speaking in that. I spoke at it in the first year. He has new speakers every year. And Aram is on a lot of people's radar in a very big way because of that event. Won't even speak at his own event, which is my biggest thing. I'm like, bro, you got to get on your own stage. Like, seriously. But he's a giving guy. He's the definition of a go-giver. He supports other people. Everybody likes him. Everybody wants to include him. And now he's getting invites to speak at stuff like the Coach Catalyst one that they do in the Virginia area. And he was part of Raise the Bar last year. And I know that things are only going to grow for a guy like Aram. But Aram went and is like Nick Lamb and Derek Mendoza when they started Raise the Bar. They created something that they could get on the stage with, and they reach out to a lot of people they didn't know, platform those people. You were part of year one. I attended. We're both part of year two and year three. And those guys just went out and did something. And it's put them on a lot of people's map. There's no reason why anybody listening here can't do that in your local space. You don't have to, yeah, you can reach out to industry leaders and give it a shot and see who'll show up. It might get in over your head a little bit with the scale of it, like Aram did. But he's back. He lost money on the first 2 years. He's back for more. Or maybe you just focus on serving locally. And it's also a great way to raise your profile and become 3 Mile famous because you become a local educator and authority. And honestly, having a good relationship with the local trainers, I have gotten so many referrals from other coaches locally over the years. That's been huge.
And so listen, the other thing too is like, think about what the people that are speaking in general, like any event, but like our events as well, right? Like they're exceptionally good at a thing or a couple of things, right? Like I talk about this word so much, which is proof of concept. And I think people kind of skip the gun of this, right? Proof of concept is like showing that the thing works, right? A buddy of mine, again, a person that I met at one of Adam Bornstein's 212 events, Noah Kagan, very successful guy, has a $100 million company, AppSumo, just launched a book not that long ago called $1 Million Weekend. Excellent, like simple but excellent on how to launch stuff. And in there, he has an example of, hey, when you have an idea, like here's how you take that idea and like very simply with very low investment, find out if the shit works. Proof of concept, right? And my point being is that like, look, when you're speaking, right, most of the time I'm like, the way I got on stages is like I was just sharing stuff that I was, that was my craft and continues to be my craft. And I'm very, very, very good at that craft. And then I'm sharing my best stuff with people, right? So because I want you to think about this as a coach, a business owner, whoever's listening to this, and going like, hey, do I feel very confident and is my skill set very good in something like that I can get results in? For most people listening to this is like coaches. So yeah, can you get clients results? Okay, so you can speak on that. Go with that topic and share it with more people. Give your best stuff, right? As Frank Kern taught me, give your best stuff away for free, right? It's the best marketing strategy there is, right? And guess what? Because when that comes out, like there's many people that I'm like, I've listened to, like didn't know them, don't have a lot of followers, but I heard them and I was, geez, like this is fucking good. I want to get them on a show. I want to hire them I'm going to pay them to teach me this thing, but they have 5,200 followers. Does that mean they don't know their shit? But the thing is, they went out there and I heard them and I'm like, damn, fire, amazing. I want, and that would be a person I'm like, dude, show me and I'll put you on because damn, this is good. More people need to hear about this, right? So that's the like I think the idea, again, the principle that you want to think about to get in front of people. Again, both, I think this, a lot of this conversation is like both 3 Mile famous and world famous, if you want to call it, or nationally famous, right? All of it comes down to the same thing, which is like sharing your craft and adding value and being useful and getting in front of people. Get the gift strategy, get in front of them. Now, just we have technology that just allows us to do that in an easier way.
It's a really good book that's almost like a step-by-step playbook on how to do the local thing as well. It's called Authority Content. Right? Go grab that book.
Yep.
It's short, easy. It'll teach you how to set up local seminars. You can film that stuff, and then you can turn around and use that stuff through your media, and it showcases literal authority in that space. It could be a um, good starting point to get local businesses to realize that you do this, you have expertise in that realm. And these local businesses, they are looking for credible people to get in front of their employees because they're more than ever interested in investing in employees' health and wellness. And because they realize, like, smart people realize that healthier, uh, fit, active employees, they miss less time. They're more productive, right? It's better mental health, better workplace environment overall. And you get in front of these companies locally, and sometimes it's knocking on doors. Uh,
And we're also in a space right now. This is what I was just sharing with the Anytime Fitness crew that I did end staff for was I was like, look, you never know. Number one, you never know who you're coaching, right? Um, and this is why I think this industry is so cool, man. Like because you end up coaching such a like. Look, first of all, I think all my clients are amazing. I don't give a shit what they do, right? It's like taking them from where they are on a GPS to where they want to be is to me is like my purpose. Now, with that said, what I mean by that is like, look, I train one of the investors in the Sounders, the president of the Reign soccer team, the vice president of the Seahawks. Again, on and on and on it goes. Like, top 3 vascular surgeons in the nation, and you're just like, man, it's so cool. Now, with a lot of those too, when you do a great job, you start getting opportunities. Now, like some of the people that I coach in business, that legitimately were like their client. And it's like, oh, they own a big, like, what was it? A trash company. Like we're talking $1 billion company, right? That's like, hey, I'd like to set something up for like wellness at our company. Dude, it opens up a 6-figure, like one deal. That's a 6-figure deal for doing corporate wellness, right? Because you're doing a great job, right? Because they're like, man, I'd love to have that for my company. Or, coming to speak. I've spoke at, Boeing twice. I know there can be a lot of jokes coming in here. Obviously, I should have spoke more to help some of the shit. But, but that was too alley-oop for that one. But it was like the engineering crew. I came in one time, crushed it. They're like, yo, can you come back and speak to more people? And again, like, these things happen because there's a proof of concept. People see it, people experience it, and it opens up doors. You never know. Like, you really never know. And remember, there's like this hockey stick up curve with corporate wellness. And by the way, the smaller ones too. I got a company that hit me up. This is what they specialize in that I may hire. They're like, hey, what we do is we get smaller companies that can't basically do corporate wellness because it's less than 150 employees. And we make connections with gyms like yours. So we could create a corporate wellness program for them. You pay them, they give you they give you a guaranteed 40 leads and then, help you close and whatnot. But like these are not like a client signing up. This is like a 3, 5, 10, $15,000 a month, contract or more, right? Because there's more and more companies realizing like that's such an important factor for people. Health is the worst it's ever been. Productivity is down. Mental health is like down, right? Like, and so, but the thing is, well, how do you get that? Well, you get that by being great at what you do, and it opens up doors. And I know we're kind of we're veering off, but we're not because me speaking and doing a lot of the lunch and learns. Who are you speaking for? Well, you're speaking for companies, and I was doing like small, like I mean, I would have like a lunch and learn with 6 people, where I would have bigger ones with 150 to 200 people at the company, right? It doesn't matter. Like you're already practicing your craft and practicing to be ready for quote unquote, the big stage.
And I'll throw something out there too. So when I got my first public speaking thing, you were my first text. I'm like, Luka, what books you got on public speaking? And you gave me Talk
Naked
Like Ted
presenter.
by
Talk like that.
Carmine Gallo, and you gave me Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs, and I dove
Steve
into
Jobs,
those.
and the third one was the naked presenter. I
Okay,
remember.
yeah. Anyway, so I got to go back to that one, but I did the first two, and honestly, that was literally more than enough to give me the foothold I needed to build this
Yeah.
presentation. It rocked. That turned into it exploded after that. It literally exploded, and I kind of look around. I'm like, how the fuck did this happen? All the same, as rewarding as it is, it's still a tiny little piece of a career. The career is still rooted in just taking care of the person in front of me. Uh, I would still love my career. I always did, even before this public speaking stuff happened. And I keep going to events, not because I think, all right, I want to get on that stage. I go to events because I love being there. I went to ROMs last year again. After speaking the year prior, I had an amazing time. I felt like a VIP. Tons of people came down. That's a killer event. I if I wasn't in your lineup, I would be there regardless, no questions anyway, because I love the Vigor Summit. I love being in that area. We'll see so many, great old friends. And this stuff is a neat little bonus. It feels great and it's cool that that we get that bonus. But honestly, it's such a small part of it. So I kind of hope everybody will just consider coming in, just hanging out, meeting everybody. You never know, like the connections that come out of this stuff, all my writing stuff pretty much has stemmed from connections I made through all my travel as well. The other one that I wanted to highlight was, I mean, some of your key relationships, they're not just the Cressies and Martin Rooney's, but they're the guys who are just like you that you met at events. Krebs being the main one, right? Your buddy Steve Krebs.
Yes. I mean, Steve was well, here's a couple of examples, right? Me and Steve did business together for over a decade. We met at a mastermind that we were in together. For example, myself and Andy McCloy, who's one of my closest friends, and we're working, on a project that will probably be, a 2025, late 2025 project, maybe. Joe Jameson. And, I've known Joe for well over a decade. And, he does my back end. We're working on a big thing that we will likely announce at the summit. So, and I mean, dude, Martin Rooney, same thing. Started business division together, did a lot of work together, and I could go on and on, like actual, because I would really have to go kind of like the Rolodex and go like, oh, I still do business with this person. Oh, in some ways I do, I do this, I do that, and all those. Which, by the way, it was either these events and or coaching programs and masterminds, because you know why? It You get the word will be either the intimacy and slash the intensity. So what I mean by that is like, look, I think I might have shared this on the show before, but if not, this is a very, very powerful formula. And there's a book, it's literally a book on it. It's called the likability formula, right? The likability formula equals proximity plus frequency plus duration plus intensity, right? Now, let me explain that. Like proximity, the more you're around a person, like, and I mean physically, like physically is obviously much more powerful, much more intense than it is, through social media or Zoom or whatever it may be. That's still good, but it's still not the same, right? So there's studies been done. Like if you walk down the same path as a person walking their dog, you never say hi, but like every day you're walking past this person, like 20 some days in, like you're like, oh, I like this person.
The
It,
ultimate example is the people you see at the gym all the time you never talk to. You see them out in the
yep.
grocery store, boom, you immediately have a connection. You can talk to them
Absolutely.
every single time.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely. So, so there's that. And again, you can dive into the research of this. The book has a plenty of it, but at proximity, then obviously you have, frequency. If the more frequently it happens, if you see them every day, you go to the big box gym, see the same person at the same time, very, very likely the likability will be there. You connect with them faster. Then duration, how long it is, but the intensity. Let me explain. Intensity, I told people I went to Wake Up Warrior, which is a program for men. It's like married businessmen, successful businessmen. I was at that point in time divorced, but like I went into that, really helped me out. But now here's the thing: it started with Warrior Week, which it was very intense, right? Like exercise, like military type stuff, emotional breakdowns. And look, I'm not pitching this or anything like that. Or I'm trying to make a point that there was a bunch of people, men there that I didn't know anything about. But 4 days later, man, they were my brothers. And still to this day, have a very good relationship with majority of them, connect with them, talk to them, right? Why? Because the intensity was so high. We suffered together, right? Like we connected together. And so events, they kind of gel that and compress the hell out of it. The proximity, there's more intensity, right? You really get to like, again, skin, what Martin Rooney calls skin to skin, right? You get around people and it's like it progresses things significantly faster. And I, by the way, that likability formula, think about that a little bit. I share it because that's actually a cheat code for, what we were talking about, both building brand and being 3 Mile famous, right? Like I run a lot of like the content that I do locally. So if it's doing well, I'll run it locally so people are seeing me a lot. So what is there? There's frequency, right? There's duration. There is proximity. Not as good as seeing it in person, but they're seeing videos of me. Then I'm doing speaking stuff. They're seeing me there, skin to skin. Online brand. It's like, man, I keep seeing this guy. If you got somebody that's like a mobility guy, and I'll, take, for instance, Vernon Griffith that's speaking at the event, which is awesome, right? 2022 NSCA Trainer of the Year. He's blown up online, on social, but very, very smart, sharp dude. Same thing. Guess how I met Vernon? Through friends. He was in Seattle for a thing, came by the gym. We connected physically in person. I hit him up, said, hey, do you want to do a live event like of the stuff that you're teaching? He's like, yeah, I've never done one, but I will. Cool. Boom. We do an event. We have 25, 30 people show up for that event. Proximity, intensity, right? Like, yo, this stuff works, right? This is some real shit. So you take that likability formula. It's why in-person events are so powerful. Number two, take that formula because it's also what helps you become more known locally and building your brand beyond the local market.
So you got Vernon. I'm in. Who else is in for the Vigor lineup?
We got the legend that is Joe DeFranco. Last time around, because it was like the post-COVID. The last event that I did was like that post-COVID year. So, and I mean, because you were there, but it was also a challenge for some people to travel, to make it afraid of. And also that, like, I think Jody's dad was sick at that point in time, or his grandparents, I can't remember, but that's why he didn't come. And so Joe DeFranco finally coming out, which is going to be phenomenal. On the hands-on day, we got Lee Boyce. The hands-on day is fire. So this year, the hands-on day, me and Jason Brown are doing like a 3-hour master class on program design, which personally, like just that in and of itself will be worth the price of admission. And then we have Lee Boyce, Martin Rooney, and Mike Robertson, all on hands-on, all about coaching. Like you leave that day, you're going to be a much, 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 much better coach and program designer, which is the craft. From there, we got Jeremy Hills, which I'm super fired up about. So if anybody know, I mean, I hope that people know Jeremy, but he owns Collective. So the gym's in Austin. But on top of that, he used to be a director of sports performance at On It. He's the founder and president of Collective, a private social performance club in Austin. And he's also partly responsible for multiple brands. And you'll know this one, Kane Footwear, which is blown up. So Kane Footwear is like, I mean, it's like every NFL guy, NBA guy now has it on. They've absolutely exploded. But he's also been responsible for Oxfit at the Texas Ranchers and NCL National Cycling League. So he builds brands, and they just opened, I think, a wine bar as well. He's an absolute savage. So, but I'm having him come in and talk about how to build a business, right? And basically the principles underlying it, because there's basically a blueprint, and he's done it. So he's a brick and mortar guy, but he's also built obviously a brand online. So that's going to be fire. We got Martin Rooney on the hands-on day and also on the lecture day. And I mean, you already know Martin's going to bring the fire. We got Dr. Andy Galpin, which I'm beyond excited about.
Huge.
Yes, that's and he just moved back to Washington. He's about an hour out in Seattle, so which is cool because he's back home. He's gonna be talking about the future of performance and but talking about like what are the tools and what's going to be possible. So this is very important, I think, for coaches, because, for example, he owns a company that does enhances sleep, Vitality, which is basically, all the blood work, and then they help you like integrate what to do to improve, obviously, your health and performance. So you'll be talking all about that, but it's going to be like, hey, this is where things are going. Like you need to pay attention to it. Then we got Sohi Carpenter. By the way, like the people that are going to be attending in the crowd are going to be like keynotes at other events, essentially. I can't even mention all of them, but Brad Carpenter will be there. I know Jonathan Goodman will be there. Gunnar Peterson is going to be there. Jen Witherstorm is going to be there. The list goes on.
Wow.
So we got Ava Guzman, Jordan Syatt, my brother Jordan Syatt. That's same thing. He couldn't make it to the last one because he had all the craziness of COVID, and he had to go to Greece for his post-wedding. So he's going to be out here, which is phenomenal. I mentioned Andrew Coase already. Mark Fisher, hell to the yes.
Yep.
So he's going to be breaking down the success coaches and gyms. Joel Jameson. Joel's got a dope, like he's got a dope. We talked about what he's going to do, but he's got a launch prezo. So obviously Joel's been successfully launched a lot of online stuff, and he's going to talk from personal experience of his own companies and things that he's helped launch for other companies. How to do like $100,000, multiple $100,000 launches. We'll basically create a blueprint for it. And then myself, and obviously we already said that you're going to be there. So
All big bodies, always big bodies.
oh,
So
listen, man, like and I mean when you look at like that breakdown, like what you're going to talk about, it's like there's all these out, and that's what I always want to do with the summit, where it's like people that have been there, done that, are doing it, and in different aspects of it. So it's like how to become better at your craft, right? Which is a lot of the hands-on day and also some of the lecture days, right? And then how to be better at the business of coaching. So this is your sales, your marketing, how to grow your business, how to grow your brand. And also, that third aspect, which is the connection aspect, which is like how to build your, I hate the word network, how to build your tribe, how to build your community. Again, internally with your own business, and then externally, meaning like with the connections, like what we just talked about, right? And I think that's so powerful, man. Like to me, it's always been, I know that there's a lot of events that are more specific. It's just how to grow your gym. And obviously like that's part of what I do in business. But I always veer back to, having like, look, I'm such a coach at heart. At the end of the day, the thing that we do, our craft, is coaching and helping people, like literally coach, the definition of the word is like, a thing that takes you from one place to the other, from where somebody is to where somebody wants to go, because it's hard for them to get there themselves. Like that's the definition of it, right? So it's like, that's what we do. So guess what? Any type of summit that I ever put on will always have a big aspect of it being how to get better at the thing. Because if you're going to be successful long-term in this career, that's your, I talk about, that's what I'm talking at Camp Fit Pro about, and what I talked at Raise the Bar about, which is, these buckets of building a successful fitness career. The first two buckets that nobody can ever take away from you is knowledge and skills, right? So it will always be an aspect of like building your skill set of becoming a better coach to get people results. And then the other one is going to be the skill set of building your business. Those are two different kind of, I would say, segments that we'll always address.
all right, we're out of time. Always appreciate you, everybody listening. So if you're hopefully you're listening to this like when it comes out, that way you'll still have access to the early bird price for both of us. Mine is going to cut off on July 31st. Yours probably going to be done around the same time. Either way, hit us up if you're interested in info about both our events. Go message Luka at Luka Hocevar that on Instagram. That's it. Check out your website. All roads go through your Instagram, I'm sure. Any real quick, because you're very loquacious, real quick final words. Why should people come?
Listen, I hope that, first of all, the way you find a summit site is you go on Google, you put in Vigor Ground Summit, and just pops up first thing. So you don't have to like do all the URLs and stuff. But with that said, look, I really hope that I see you at the summit. It can sound like a little crazy, but I promise you that like there's so many people that one event has been a catalyst and a catapult to their business and their career. And I crafted this one to where it was the best. I don't, again, I do it every 2-3 years. And when I do these summits now, I always want it to be spectacular. I never want to take a step back. And this year I think is the best it's ever been. And, if you go there, the price of admission will be peanuts compared to what you get out of it. And if you apply like 20% of the stuff you learned, you will have the best year in your career ever, period.
I'll vouch for it. Times two, 2017, major lever forward. 2021, unbelievable stuff came out of it for me. I'm living proof. So guys, go hang out with us at one, the other, or hopefully both of our events. And thank you for tuning in. Appreciate you, and appreciate you, Luka.